Okay, this is the online video for project number 3. Go to Learning Module 4, where project number 3 lives, and then go down to the project page. Click on that, and then when the project page opens, you can download the project elements by clicking the link. When you check your downloads folder, you see everything is zipped up, as it always is, so you have to unzip it. When you unzip it, you'll see the top 2 items there are the step-by-step written instructions in both Word doc and PDF format. And then there are 8 music cuts. These are from various music libraries that my studio used to have licenses for. Music libraries record pieces to be used for radio, television, film, web, however you want to use it. So if you click on the step-by-step instructions, you can see the written instructions. There are only a couple pages on this one. It's not very detailed. So go ahead and open Audition if you haven't already launched Audition. It should be on your dock by this point since you've used it so much, but you can always find it in the Applications folder. Audition opens on this screen, which is the waveform editor. Again, it's kind of unremarkable, a little dark and gray. And we typically won't use the waveform editor for most projects in this course. So what we want to do is click either on the multi-track button there near the top left portion of the screen, or you can go File, New, Multi-Track Session, or just hit Command-N. When you do that, this page opens up, and this is the parameters page for the new multi-track session where you can name it. And typically you would name it your first name, last name, and P3 or Project 3. Put it on the desktop so you can easily find it, or if you have a hard drive or some other place you've been sticking your projects, put it there. Template, none. Like I said, we won't be using templates in this course. Sample rate, 44.1, because all the music here came from CD, so all the music is 44.1. Even though the bit depth of the music is 16-bit, we're going to do it at 32-bit and stereo just to keep it consistent throughout the semester. Click OK, and when you do that, the multi-track editor opens, typically in the Edit window. And the first thing you might want to do is then import the files. So go File, Import Files, or just Command-I is the quick method, or you can simply go to the Downloads folder, grab all those files, and drag them into the session. Either one will work. And there they are in the Files panel. By the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but the speaker icon at the bottom center of that screen will allow you to click and basically audition these files without actually having to drag them onto the timeline, as long as that's highlighted or blue like that. So you can just click from cut to cut, and when you want to turn it off, the button now that looks like a play button or an arrow, right arrow, once you start playing, that turns into a square, which is like a stop button, and you can click on that to stop the playing. So I'm going to drag this file DWCD 00484 number 8 onto the timeline. This, by the way, is one of the few pieces in the library that has vocals. Most of the pieces in the library are instrumental because they're designed to be underscore for announcer, narration, whatever. But occasionally, these get used in movies, and in those situations, they may want a vocal, something that they can license relatively cheaply without having to pay tens of thousands of dollars to license a hit song or whatever. So this is a piece that's designed to be used in a movie. So it actually has lyrics. When we bring it out onto the timeline, notice almost every CD that you work with will have some silence at the very beginning. And this is by design. CD mastering people put a little delay at the start there, so some CDs don't queue up too tightly onto the tracks. What happens is if you don't have that, then some CD players will actually start in the middle of the first beat and you'll actually be missing the attack. It's usually less than a second and no one even notices it because it seems instantaneous. But you want to cut that off. Not necessarily for this project you have to do that, but for future it's just a good habit whenever you're working from a CD to go and cut that off. So as I showed you in Project 2, rather than using the Move tool, we can actually use the Time Selection tool, which is the one that looks like a little I-beam or a little vertical line. And we can drag through that and hit Command-K, and that will actually put a split on both sides of the edit. So once we do that, we can highlight it and then hit Shift-Delete, and that will snug this piece to the beginning of the timeline so that the track is actually starting at the beginning. Again, it's not a big deal with Project 3 since we probably won't even use the very beginning, but just for future, it's a good practice. Before I start placing markers and marking this song up here, this is a video from my ebook on song structure that might be helpful. Most songs, independent of the genre, will have a similar structure. There's generally a short introduction at the very beginning, followed by a verse, which is the narrative portion of the song. In other words, the verse tells the story. The verse leads into a chorus, which reveals the underlying or main idea of the song. It's called the chorus because originally everyone would join in and sing this part of the song. There may also be a section after the verse that leads into the chorus called a pre-chorus. In any case, this verse-chorus pattern is then repeated. Usually, the lyrics of each verse are different to reveal more of the story, but each chorus is almost always identical. After one or more choruses, there's often a bridge section, which is approximately the length of a verse. It's added to make the song more interesting. Following the bridge, the song usually returns to the verse-chorus structure until the end. There may also be an instrumental section, which could be the length of a verse, a chorus, or both. There can be several variations of this format. For example, instead of a verse, a song could start with a chorus. It could end with several repeated choruses, or simply have a chorus with no verses. Just like diagramming a sentence like that you used to do in elementary school, I'm going to kind of diagram this song, and I'm going to do it with markers. If you're not seeing the markers, then open the window menu and scroll down to where you see markers. It's kind of alphabetical there, and make sure that's checked. The markers usually appear on the left-hand side under the Files panel, but the window could be someplace else on the screen. So I'm going to go through the song, and every time I can identify a new section of the song, for example, the intro, the verse, the chorus, the verse, the chorus, the verse, the chorus, bridge, whatever, I'm going to indicate that with markers. I'm not going to be too careful. I generally put the markers in on the downbeat, even though there may be a pickup, which is the part ahead of the downbeat. The lyric may start there, but I usually try to mark it on the downbeat. But this can be fairly rough because we'll go and fine-tune it later. And you can see there that this song kind of follows a typical song format. By the way, you can use this markers panel and also the markers as kind of an auto-locator. We used to have this when we worked on tape, when we want to locate the position of a chorus or whatever. We could punch numbers in and then have the tape rewind it. But we can jump back and forth very quickly. If you're on the actual timeline, if you use Option and then the left and right arrow keys, you can actually jump back and forth between the markers. Or if you go to the markers panel, you can double-click on what looks like the home plate icon there, and that will take you to that particular marker. Now, this technique I originally developed as a teaching tool, but I found it was very helpful to actually use professionally as well. So the technique I'm going to show you now is one where you can make perfect edits every time. Click on the track name. It turns white. I'm going to highlight the track basically. Then I'm going to go to the multi-track menu and go to Tracks, Duplicate Selected Tracks. It's going to create a duplicate of the track just below it. Then I'm going to right-click on that, and I'm going to mute the track. I don't really need to hear it. I just want to be able to see it so I can compare the beats. Music edits work best when you cut on similar sections. When you find a spot in the song early in the song that's the same as a spot late in the song, because the music was naturally going to go there anyway. The cardinal rule in a music edit is it usually sounds right if it sounds like somebody could have written it that way. So obviously, if you're going from verse 1 to chorus 1, should sound about the same as if you're going from verse 1 to chorus 3. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to find two identical sections in the song and mark those. And I've already done that at the beginning of chorus 1 and the beginning of chorus 3. I'm going to put the playhead on chorus 1, and I'm going to do a Command K. Then I'm going to move the playhead to chorus 3. I'm going to do a Command K. I'm going to highlight the piece in the middle, and I'm going to hit Shift Delete. It's going to pull those two pieces together. Now, at this point, the edit could be perfect, or it could be too rushed, meaning that I removed too much of the file, or it can sound draggy, meaning that I left too much space in there. And I'll know that by comparing the green on top with the white on the bottom. The white is unedited and the green is the edited. And even though there may be some differences because the choruses are so similar, the beats should line up. So when I zoom in on the edit, I can see that the green appears to be late to the white. I can see that the first really strong beat after the edit is about an inch away. So what I need to do then is trim off the front of the edited piece there on the incoming side a little bit, and then slide the incoming side to the left so that it lines up better with the unedited track, the white one on the bottom there. I'm going to line those up, and that looks pretty good. I'll play it to make sure it sounds good, and it does. And so we're just about done. I want to note here that in some cases, it may actually be easier to make the edit with the incoming side and outgoing side on separate tracks. That way you can kind of crossfade perhaps the outgoing side more into the incoming side and play with the fades a little bit better than you do now. You could actually crossfade these even on one track, but it's easier to do it when they're on two tracks. But in this case, I don't need to do that. Now, because in your submission, I don't really want to have to listen to 4 minutes of music to figure out what you've done here. I just want to hear a 20-second clip of music with about a 10-second pre-roll and a 10-second post-roll. That way I'll be able to hear the rhythm. I'll know the edit is coming about in the middle of the file that you send me. And I can tell from the context whether the edit is good or not. So the edit was at 39 seconds. I'm going to go back 10 seconds ahead of that to 29 seconds. I'm going to put the playhead at that point. I'm going to highlight the track. I'm going to do a Command K to split the track. Then I'm going to go to 49 seconds, which is 10 seconds after the edit, do the same thing, highlight the track, do a Command K. Then I'm going to delete the piece at the end by clicking on it, highlighting it, and then just hitting delete. Then I'm going to go back to the piece from 0 to 29 seconds. I'm going to highlight that and do a Shift Delete, which is going to pull everything up to the beginning of the timeline. Then I'm going to blow off the guide track. I don't need it anymore. I can just click on it. It's all one piece and just hit delete, and that's gone as well. I'll hit the backslash key now just to make sure that there's nothing far out on the timeline. I should see just a little bit of space at the right side of my file, but that should be good. Now, if I check my actual session folder at this point, I still don't have anything except for the Adobe Audition EDL, which is the SESX file, and all the backups that happen every 3 minutes or so. I don't have any audio files in that because I haven't saved. So I'm going to hit Command S. This window is going to open up and say, hey, some of these files that are in your session aren't in your folder. Do you want to copy them? And the answer is yes. Now, depending on the version of Adobe Audition you have, it may either copy only the file that's on the timeline, or it may copy everything that's in the Files panel. My version at school copied only the files that were on the timeline, but my version at home, which is the 2020 version, copies everything. And so if I look in the Imported Files folder now, I should see all 8 of those files, even though I only used one of them so far in the session. Oh, be sure to keep these files handy because we'll be using this next week as well. By the way, I should mention that if you want to edit your own piece of music or some piece that you happen to like, that's fine. For Project 3, you can edit any piece of music you want. Again, I have to export this. This file that's on the timeline doesn't really exist except as this EDL. So I'm going to do File, Export, Multitrack Mixdown, Entire Session. When the export window pops up, you'll see that it's named the session name plus Mixdown at the end, which is fine. It's putting it on the desktop. If you want to put it someplace else, you can browse and put it someplace else, but the desktop is always a good place to put it. The format is MP3. That's the only file format that Canvas will accept for this project. You want to do it 44:1 and 16-bit. If it's higher, if it's 24-bit or something else, go ahead and change it. We want to end up with basically a 192 kilobit per second constant bit rate MP3 file at 44:1 16-bit stereo. If your window looks like that, then click OK. Then you can find the file on your desktop and play it. It's a good idea to play it. It's only going to take 20 seconds to make sure that it's exactly the way you want it. Then go to Canvas, go to the project page, click Submit Assignment, browse your computer to find the project on your desktop, click on it, and then submit it. And you're done.